Hey ladies and gentlemen, Trigger John coming at you with another Diablo Immortal video. This one is going to be a guide on the Pit of Anguish. This is so that way you can actually move forward in the Pit of Anguish and do this in lightning fast speeds so you can keep pushing on into the higher held difficulties, especially to get ready to farm the higher difficulties easier. Because as we traverse through all these difficulties, it's becoming more and more apparent of the gap in between going from one hell to the other hell, depending on the residence you have. So taking little key factors like this that I'm going to suggest really make a big difference on how fast you can progress and how quickly you can accomplish and finish these dungeons so you can get your proper set items that you need for your build. All right, so let's go ahead and let's talk about Pit of Anguish really quickly before we go ahead and fire up and get into this video a little bit more. Pit is one of those that is, it's actually one of the more simple dungeons in my personal opinion. It's got the three phases to the fight. You have a first phase, which is very close to the beginning of the fight, where you fight a quick boss. Then a lot of it's traversing to the secondary boss, which is in a big open room. It's pretty easy to knock that one down. And then even the last boss is really simple to kill. However, there's a lot of mechanics and there's a lot of animations that go into this one, which makes this one longer than most, unfortunately. However, this one itself, I think you can get down to, I want to say it's close to about 4 minutes or so as far as time goes, especially when farming Hell 5. Now, waits to do this, right, are going to be very circumstantial. It's going to depend on what kind of characters you have in your party and what kind of things you're utilizing. What I'm going to showcase is the fact that I'm using 2 barbarians, a crusader with banner, with a movable banner, as well as myself, who's a demon hunter, and I'm going to be considered the DPS and damage. Now, the reason why these are powerful and why we're going to talk about them is because the barbarians have a unique skill, which I'm going to go ahead and pull it up. This is going to be demoralize and sprint. Now, what I've done is I've asked my good friend Brandon to go ahead and supply me with these images. Definitely go follow him at his YouTube channel, JKG Brandon, underscore Brandon, but or gaming. I don't know, I'll leave a link down to his stuff below. I call him Brandon. I talk to him literally every day. Hella good friend of mine. But anyways, demoralize and sprint. Now, these were something where I never saw a barbarian as a good support unit, right? I saw them as kind of like a general meh unit, to be honest with you. However, one thing noticing and talking about the barbarians and utilizing them as well as a crusader is the fact that the barbarians actually have demoralize and sprint, and their sprint allows the whole team to move faster as long as they're encased in the same area. So let's say, for example, that someone were to, I don't know, maybe use a different Paragon Tree, like, well, Mastermind, right? This is going to be a shared one. You're going to kind of keep a collaborative together, right? All party members within 5 yards. So everyone's going to be kind of tight knit anyways because you're using the Mastermind skill tree. So it's definitely one of those where you're going to want to probably pair these well together, right? Like I've talked about this on the other Mad King Breach video, but I do think Mastermind is going to be one of the best trees to be using when you're trying to punch up into the higher difficulties of hell levels and dungeons, right? Especially if you're trying to get those set items. It's super impactful. Maybe not necessarily as impactful in the open world farming aspect, but in the dungeon farming, it's definitely something you must be using. I honestly would recommend it highly. And if you're someone who's dying quite often, I would be going for as much life bonuses as you can possibly get on your build to allow you to have that much more survivability, because life and damage are the best and most rewarding actual skill passive skill attributes that you can get from your Paragon trees. Now, let's talk about why demoralize and sprint are so good. So sprint, like we said, sprint now allows increased movement speed of nearby allies by 40%, so that's 40% faster. So when we're talking about Pit of Anguish, we're talking about going from point A to point B, and you're running as fast as you possibly can, not targeting, not hitting anything as you move, so that way you can get to the very end as fast as possible, so you can start doing this flip-flop where you're gonna fight the I don't know what it's called, the demon, devil, whatever, and then you're gonna fight its heart, and then you're gonna fight it and go back and forth. So you're trying to get to that last cutscene as fast as humanly possible. That's where sprint comes in. Now, it does have a 30-second cooldown, which is unfortunate, but it'll be, 10 seconds? No, that one's 10 seconds. Yeah, demoralizes of 30 seconds. That one's 10 seconds, so that means you can pop it pretty frequently, keep it pretty active, keep it constantly moving. Next to demoralize, I talked about this one before as well, but this one's huge because what I think a lot of people neglect to think about and realize is the fact that if I go ahead and I put this away, demoralize boosts all damage by 25%, right? Damage. So damage goes up by 25%. What is crit damage? Well, if we go and we look at crit damage or armor penetration in this case, when you crit hit damage by 44% from baseline of double damage. So really, if you crit, you're doubling your damage, right? So really, that's more like a 50% increased damage boost. So when you do crit, you do a lot of massive damage. So what if you were to pair Demoralize with a banner, which then allows you to constantly crit, right? That just compounds things exponentially. Same thing if you use a monk. A monk has the same type of support system where if you use that, it increases the damage done of your primary skills. So then at that point, you could have double the damage plus the banner on top of having a Demon Hunter, which is the best single target damage nuker in the game. That allows you to just destroy bosses and content. Well, that makes things really, really easy when you're trying to go from point A to point B when we're talking about Pit of Anguish. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to go ahead and pull up the footage and the video of me actually running in the Pit of Anguish, and that way you guys have a good idea of what to be looking for and what to expect when you're trying to run it. And I'll point out a couple of things here and there that I did that maybe made this a little bit easier, a little bit better. And I also see, I think I die in this one too. I'm also going to point out when it's okay to, when it's not okay to. Okay. All right. So as you can see here, we are going to go ahead and we are going to start up the Pit of Anguish fight. Now, with this being said, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to put it up there. The timer is going to start when the cutscene starts rolling. That's when I consider the start of the run, so that we can see the exact time that this takes. This whole video should be about 4 minutes long, I believe. So first things first, no different than anything else, you want to try to blast through as fast as you can to that first boss. You can see it in the upper right-hand corner where you see the actual icon there. That is the first boss. This one you got to kind of watch out for. If you don't burst it down fast enough, what it'll do is it'll do a zigzag line actually on the base plane, and when it does that beam as it's doing that will instantly kill you 90% of the time, and it's really painful. Luckily, if you die in that section, it's okay because you start back at the beginning and it's right there. Now, one thing I want you to notice is look at how long the journey is from going from here to here. You notice that it takes a long time. Now I'm ahead of the pack at the current moment, so I'm not actually really utilizing the Barbarian Skills at this time. However, you will notice that they come in here pretty quickly. Everyone else kept up with me, and now we're going to go ahead and move forward and recover. Now this is for the lift, and this is why now would not be a good time to die. Oh, also, make sure you don't allow an enemy to get on that rift or that lift with you, because what happens is you aren't able to do any damage during this point, so it will automatically die from that enemy if they get on the lift at the same time as you. So now you can see us moving. You see at the very bottom that little white circle that was underneath all of us. That was because one of the barbarians actually procced their sprint skill, so that allowed us to move a little faster. Now you'll see that we're going to go ahead and we're going to take on the boss. What I do is I position myself to the back of him this entire time. Mainly just because, one, it just makes it easier. Allow the barbarians to get targeted. They're going to be kind of targeted anyways because they're going to be using Demoralize. But notice how quickly we were able to knock that boss down because we had a double Demoralize at that point and a banner up when my Vengeance popped, right? So that allowed me to do a massive amount of damage very quickly, especially with my charms and everything that I have going on with my particular Demon Hunter build. That makes me do a lot more damage even though I'm super underpowered. Notice that I'm at 226. Also, and if you notice, we stopped at that one spot and kind of stayed there for a second and waited for everyone to catch up. You want to make sure you do that because what will happen is if you jump the gun a little too early on that scene, it'll block everyone out, and someone who's stuck farther behind and actually engaged with the enemy, more than likely they're going to die, unfortunately. So you want to make sure that you work as a team. Now, one other thing, as you see, I'm doing all this damage. Now, everyone else is kind of focusing on the center of the worm. I like to focus on the left hand or the far right hand side. Reason being is it's less surface area that the Zaka is actually going to attack you or try to kill you. And also, there was a slight bug back in the day where if you got into the very pit or the very top angle, so to speak, of that location, as long as he's not doing that big red area move there, you were actually invulnerable. Like, he would not be able to actually apply any damage to you, even though he was firing right next to you. But I like to stay on the outskirts of this. I definitely highly would recommend that you also stay within the same distance of your barbarians so they can give you your buffs, but stay on the sides of it. Now, notice I did die here. Luckily for me, revive at checkpoint works out well in this location because you come right back right there, and we actually just triggered this cutscene anyways. So had I died anyways and then revived back somewhere else, it would have triggered the cutscene. I would have been automatically sucked into this belly of the beast, so to speak. Now this is where we go back and forth. There's a lot that goes into this one. Just as far as timing goes, timing is kind of everything when you're doing this type of fight. So notice that we're gonna start off with a banner here. Go ahead and burst him down. Notice we bursted him down pretty quickly there. He's gonna die. There we go. Now we're gonna have the heart. At this point, I think they're gonna pop one Demoralize. So we can go ahead and pop the heart again. And then now one of the other barbarians should be popped popping another, there it is, there's the other demoralize, as well as another banner. This allowed us to do a crap ton of damage very quickly. Now, unfortunately, I did die on this one, and that's okay, because they're going to be able to scale him pretty quickly here. I do believe, I can't remember if I end up reviving or if they end up, no, they're going to revive me. No, I went ahead and revived, yeah. Unfortunately, this does take a little while, but they already killed the boss. So I got very lucky that they killed the boss in the heart. So then that triggered the end of it, and it brought me to the end anyway. So it's okay that I die at that location. As long as your team kills it, then you all come back together. And that's actually going to do it for this whole run. I mean, we're talking 4 minutes for a speed run on Pit of Anguish. That's pretty good, especially depending on what side items you're going for. And as you see here, we collect all of our loot, we open our chest at the end, and we're out of here. So hopefully this video helps you, and hopefully that gives you a better idea of how to speed farm Pit of Anguish. Have a good rest of your day. Peace.